Hello everyone and welcome back to another math video. Today we're going to be looking at different word problems and graphs, and we're going to be looking at what does that tell you, or what does the slope and y-intercept tell you about the story. Just a reminder, this is the full lesson version, so we're going to go step by step with a bunch of examples. If you'd like the short version, I will link that in the description below. Before attempting this lesson, you should already be familiar with graphing, with rise over run, and with evaluating functions. If you'd like refreshers on any of those topics, I will link those in the description below. So we have our problem. If you want to pause the video and read it, I'll give you a second to do that. All right, so now that you've read the problem, the question says, what does the y-intercept of the line tell you about the situation? So the y-intercept is here, all right, and it's at the point 0, 15. And it's really important here that we know what the 0 and the 15 represent, because remember, this is x and then y. So the x's are represented as the number of movies. So this is after 0 movies have been rented, and the y is total spent. So this is, we'll say, money or cost, okay? And so what this is saying is, if we put that in words, 0 movies have been rented, but the cost is $15. And so how can that be? Well, remember, when you read the problem, it said there is a one-time cost for the membership. So when you first sign up, right, you haven't rented any movies, but you have to pay $15 to get your membership, all right? And so that's why the answer is the membership costs $15. All right, here's our cool clock for today, which means that it's time for you to practice what you just learned. Go ahead and pause the video and try these two problems on your own. And when you're ready, you can unpause the video and we'll check your answers. Okay, now that you've had time to work these problems, let's check your solutions. Okay, for the first problem, after 0 hours that Craig spent decorating, there were 40 cookies decorated, and the reason is because it said Craig's mom already decorated some cookies while Craig was in school, and so that's why the answer is Craig's mom decorated 40 cookies. And for the second problem, after 0 minutes time diving, or 0 minutes spent diving, he had 80 cubic feet of air in his tank. So, right, Rick had that when he started his dive. Okay. So if you want to pause the video, I'll give you a second to read the problem and look at the graph. All right, now that you've read the problem, the question says, what does the slope of the line tell you about the situation? So we should already be familiar with slope, and you can pick any 2 points, right? So any good points, right, has to be where the green line hits the grid on the corners. So any of these 4 points will work. I'll just use the first 2. And so we're going to use rise over run here. So we're doing rise over run. And so now we go, we rise 100, because remember, it's a scaled graph. And then we go to the right 3. Okay, so pay attention to the scales on the x and the y axis. All right, now it's really important here that we attach units to this. So this is 100 subscribers. I'm going to do subs for short. And this is 3 months. And now you can think of the fraction bar as the word per. So now let's put this into some words. This is 100 subs per 3 months. All right, so the slope is telling him how many subs he's gaining every 3 months. And so that's this answer right here. Okay, he's gaining 100 new subscribers every 3 months. All right, it's time for you to practice what you just learned. Go ahead and pause the video and try these 2 problems on your own. And when you're ready, you can unpause the video and we'll check your answers. Okay, now that you've had time to work these problems, let's check your solutions. All right, for the first problem, you should have gotten a rise over run of 1/3. And so the depth, and remember, this is a positive slope. So that means it's increasing by 1 centimeter every 3 years. So the bay's depth is increasing by 1 centimeter every 3 years. Okay, for this problem, a couple of things to note. Number one, you should have gotten a negative 100 over 10 when you did the rise over the run. Notice it's negative, right? Hopefully you remember that from rise over run, and that negative is going to be important because it tells us that we are decreasing, right? So your answer needs to have the word decrease. Secondly, you need to reduce that. It reduces to negative 10 over 1. And now we can answer the question, okay? The bin's weight is decreasing by 10 pounds for every 1 box that is packed. Okay, so the bin's weight decreases by 10 pounds for every box or every 1 box that is packed. All right, for these last types of problems, if you want to pause the video to read and look at the graph, I'll give you a second. All right, now that you've looked at this problem, we need to answer some questions about the slope and y-intercept. So let's start with the y-intercept here, which is 0, 3,600. And again, let's attach words to these. So 0 is her elevation, also known as her height. Okay, and that should be 1 over, right? Let me fix this. Okay, so the 3,600 is her elevation height, and the 0 is how much time she's been on the lift. So time on lift. So that means that, right, she hiked to the top of this mountain, right? That's what they told us, hiking to the top of Bear Mountain. And now she's taking the lift down. So Wendy got on the gondola lift at an elevation of 3,600, right? She went to the top of the mountain and then she gets on the lift. Apparently the top of this mountain is 3,600 feet. And then it says her elevation decreased by, so now we're talking about slope. So to calculate slope, let's pick 2 points here. All right. And pay attention to the scales. This is 400, so 400, 800, 1,200, 1,600. So it's negative 1,600 because we're going down. And then this goes up by 5. So 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. So now we need to do negative 1,600 divided by 25, which gives you 64. So we're getting negative 64 over 1. And now we attach words to this. This is... she's going down negative 64 feet. She's decreasing negative 64 feet for every 1 minute or per 1 minute on the lift. Okay? All right, it's time to practice. Go ahead and pause the video and try these 2 problems on your own. And when you're ready, you can unpause the video and we'll check your answers. Okay, now that you've had time to work these problems, let's check your solutions. All right, for this first problem, you should have said that the drone's battery life will last 16 minutes if no weight is added, right? That's the y-intercept. And then the battery life will decrease by 1 minute per 30 grams of weight added. And here's the work for calculating the slope. And for the second problem, we should have said the water sprite was 2 inches tall when it was planted, and it grew 5 inches per 2 months that it was planted. All right, that is it for today. I hope you all have a good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.